having more capacity to heal others around them. And then we come together as a collective whole by nature, not by some artificial means. Because when people have a knowledge of who they really are and how they got to where they are, you don't need to convince them anymore. Their level of knowledge is no longer predicated in what they believe. It becomes what they know. And a man and a woman who knows themselves is less apt to be enslaved or suppressed than one who just believes or adopts something because they want to be a part of a club or part of an organization in the guise of being a nation, when the nation is out there and it's all of the people of Canaanite, Moabite descent, etc., who have been branded by these tags: Negro, Black, Colored, Indian, etc., and many of whom are not even aware of why we were called Indians or the history of that, etc. While those designations have been applied to the ancient Canaanite Moabites, that is really not the pedigree names of the people, etc. And these subtleties that actually have a great impact on the legal and lawful status of the people is often not taken in consideration or addressed because they don't want to lose the attention of the people, and they want to keep them in this so-called follower mentality, paying tithing and dues, etc. And on the long run, there's nothing fixed because the components of the nation are not fixed. So not unlike if you have a storm come along and do damage to your house, you must fix what's broken. You don't necessarily tear your house up and then dig all the land up and throw the land somewhere, because you're not going to remake the plots of land that is your inherited estate. You may rebuild on it, or you may repair that which is on it. Likewise with the component parts of the children or the offspring of the matriarchy, etc., which are commonly called, in their process of coming into being, nativity, nasi, which means to come to life or to come into being, from which you derive the term commonly used at Midgard, referred to as nations and nationality. And this is why it's important for people to also have a more correct meaning of the social political term nationality and nationhood, etc. So when they're talking about nationhood, absent of the pedigree, etc., it creates a false paradigm of hopes, etc., that cannot be sustained unless the people are actually spiritually connected to it. And if the people keep thinking that the hybrid Europeans who have conquered the Western Hemisphere are the Americans, you're not going to do anything with them. What they will be easily subjected to COINTELPRO operation is most of these people who end up be the traitors among us and the operatives of misprision, particularly those who have been heavily influenced by the Freudian mind control systems, etc., known as the General Education Board. They promoted amongst their own children, and particularly, again, those who are members of the Bar Association and those who have been working with them are the major ones who become the infiltrators, because they have a level of intelligence already and the people trust them. But usually most of their activity will be for selfish gain economically, with no real cures for the people. And they send the people in circles. And this is according to the general rules of procedures, the civil rules of procedure set up by the circle members, the members of the Circle Church and Chancery, which is guided by those persons, which is why when our people go to the de facto court systems, which are fraudulent jurisdictions, etc., and are in fact not courts at all, that there's no remedy. And of course, these are what you call passageways or portals to their POW camps, i.e. the penal systems for genociding our people and destroying our families. And then, of course, these people who are members or associate members with them secretly, sometimes referred to as boule, among the boule and others, are actually assigned among our people to actually distract us by virtue of saying that they're helping the people or they're teaching law, etc. But you'll see that they'll always make it complex so that you can start paying them off and you're still paying Rome. And the ultimate operations or the outcome is that they're still packing the prisons with our people still are trespassing against our people, and then the operatives among our own are extracting thousands of energy notes from our people in the name of bringing them remedy, which they never do. So this is again why it's important for you to have a knowledge or have an idea why I've always taken the position that we have to heal the existing nation. You can't make a broken brick, you understand, be strong in a building unless you're using good mortar to make your repairs. And the mortar for humans in the political realm is nationality.
Thank you. We have another question I think goes right with that, because while you're on the subject, this question from Jerome Kane says, did Emperor Khufu show Taj documents of full faith and credit, and will he accept the seat that was offered? And I believe he's talking about your recent appearance on Revision Radio.
This has always been my position. I'm making myself very clear. As for myself, this is not for others, because for me, and I think Dr. Naila knows me over the years, I've never been one who's eager to take what you call titles or positions of what you would call, some people call the leader guys. I don't reject that. I think that's the spirit of others. I'm a good fisherman. I will go out and get the people. And for all these people that need these positions and powers, etc., to satisfy whatever spirit of ego they have, you can have the throne. I'm out here doing the work. That's my position. I don't need titles. But I do support anyone that's helping to heal the nation. I'm making that very clear. And keep in mind, faith and credit is a commercial system that's operating for the most part at Midgard under the commercial operations of the Uniform Commercial Codes. I'm more harmonic with getting back to nature and the true history of the ancient Kemites, Moabites, etc., which is the gold and silver in harmony with the sun, the moon, and the stars, etc., which is the actual monetary system, and the right of heirship to the land, which is the power and the source of the resources. I'm more interested in an approach from that perspective, because credit is debt. I'm not interested in indebting our people. I'm interested in restoring their estate, because our people should not be in debt to any foreigner. But I understand that how the credit systems operate. I do understand and comprehend that. However, I don't necessarily promote that. I'm going for the whale. I don't want the whiting fish. Though I like whiting fish. I'm for a restoration of the estate so that these issues, my position is this: why put our people in a position to be credited to a foreigner who's been robbing them, who's never honorable, and has no intention of being honorable, on material estates that belongs to them in the first place? And then we're going to have them process or have someone acknowledge full faith and credit, which is a debt system. I don't say that it's not to be used. It's fine in what you call an honorable system. But I just read to you King Alfred. That's their policy. And this is the reason why, like when you see over the years, all of the Asiatic people, whether you're dealing with many of the different tribes of Moors here in the Western Hemisphere, everybody that has made any agreement with them, whether they're building casinos or taking some reservation or taking some other separate piece of implied sovereign operations, they've all been betrayed. And the credit system was actually used to put them in debt on their own land. Without being honest about these dynamics is to be, to me, spiritually corrupt. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't address some of these things in our processes of rising. But I'm very clear to put everything in its place.
Okay, so we have another comment question. We'll bring it. Dr. G, please ask Taj to address the Supreme Grand Council issue that people are saying, falsely, I believe, that he is ignoring.
I'm not ignoring anything among our people. I've been doing this for about 40
Supreme Grand
years.
Council issue. I don't
Because
agree.
the Supreme Grand Council is actually rightfully with Moors coming together, which they should do logically, and all activities basically should be transparent and to the public, with manuals available to the public relative to diversity of their positions under constitutional principles that are established in fatwa, in Muslim law, etc., that are adopted in constitutional principles and treaty operations called consular venues. And what you find is that people, the common people, to whose birthright that we're all addressing, aren't even aware of it because they're not teaching them. The people are more interested in positions and titles and controlling people. And I'm saying people that need that, have fun. It's not what I do. You know, like I understand fundamental building constructions. You know, you give me time and materials, put me on a piece of land, and I'll build a castle without anyone else's help. All I would need is material, whether it's the electric, whether it's the masonry, whether it's the plumbing, whether it's the furniture, whether it's the roof, whether it's the tile, whether it's the custom shelves, whether it's custom furniture, whether it's sewing, etc. I can do it all, you know, and that's a fact.
And that I can attest to.
You know, so I look at the reality of our relationship with nature, and I measure things by that. I don't measure by people's egos or positions that, because 90% of the time, let's look at this reality. 90% of the people in almost every position of so-called leadership has more or less, in some ways, a cadre of people around them that admire them or serve them, but the greater broad spectrum of the people of the land, of whose birthright everybody's speaking of, have neither a connection to them and are not aware of them, because most of them are secretive with what they do among themselves and use it as a point of power to impress people, and are actually doing very little to none for the community at large. Now, this is not to say that that's not their intention. I'm saying if there's something relative to the right of the people, it is public and it's transparent, and it is available to be known, even if it's not known. It's not something that we need to always have in some private conversation where we're empowering each other to so-called rule the affairs of our people when they don't know the rules of the game. I'm more interested in fishing the people and making them aware of the rules of the game. If they choose to start taking their places among the affairs of men, which we should do and should be about, and logically we have to set up or restore, because not so much setting up, restore councils among our people, etc., which are the nature of our customs and traditions. I'm all for that. However, and it's not a reluctance or it's not a condemnation. I want to see more of the people that know the real history to produce literature and make it well, readily available to all of the people. Whether they accept it or not is not my argument. Made available to them, that whosoever will, let them hear. Whosoever will, let them come. And for those who come with knowledge and with comprehension of what they're dealing with, you can take those people and repair the nation. That has always been my position.
There's a comment shared from Monica Love. We cannot do work, Grand Sheik, without house cleaning.
That's exactly.
We must tighten our circle and out publicly out the agents that mislead.
You got that absolutely right. 100%, and that's part of the healing, isn't it? And I'm so glad you made that statement, because it's so true. And if you look at the history, particularly the contemporary history of many people trying to repair us, and one figure in particularly, our illustrious Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and the foundation that he set for the restoration of our state. And he has had opposition on so many fronts with people around him. However, the principles laid down by him for us and the restoration of our state and our land and our nation, etc., have proven to be absolutely correct and true. and he always reminded us so that we don't get stagnated. He would say that the half has not been told. If I told you everything, you would go back to sleep. He says, study yourselves. And when you had studied well and would ask me what to study next, I would reply, study yourselves. And of course, when you actually do that, you start making discernment. And when people start participating in national reparation willingly on knowledge and not on emotion, not on clubism, not on doing what you call a salami baloney adoration of leader guys sitting on some throne, etc. Not that I'm condemning that, etc. Guess what? You're not going to have anything. You're going to have what we've been having. All these generations passing with these principles having already been laid down and not carried out. And people pretending they got to reinvent the wheel rather than fixing or repairing the house. And I'm telling you, that's the major problem. Be honest about us all. Most of the people that have come and gone have been more preoccupied with their egos and with their images and with raising finance at the expense of the poor, and have done some good, but in fact have done limited reality of really restoring fundamental civic knowledge. And you hear people left and right talking about nation this, nation that, nation of this, nation of that, and then don't teach nationality, which is an absolute contradiction, because it's a lot of work, and it indeed is, because we have an injured people. Yes, we do, but you must be real about that. And so my principle is, I'm not unlike a carpenter I'm repairing a door right now. Those principles of carpentry apply all over the world. It's not going to be fixed with belief or emotion. It's going to be fixed with knowledge and dedication to the principles and a knowledge of the materials that are used and that are necessary to make such repairs. Doesn't operate on, oh, we need sandwiches. Well, good. If you can't cook, there's tough cookies. Get somebody who can. And all I'm saying is, I'm a fisherman. I'll catch the fish. You all do the cooking. I ain't arguing it. I don't need the titles.
Here we go. Yella Menra Whirlwind says the Moorish movement is not a social club. It is to be taken seriously because being undesirable is not acceptable.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Absolutely. And again, when you start studying doing the contemporary history of the people working to restore and to fix some of the injury among our people, that psychology has been allowed to take root without challenge. And so we find ourselves going in circles in many areas because people have adopted the idea that it's a religious belief and not the restoration of a lost estate. And so the way they approach it has been flawed. And then very often people have been taking a position of either or rather than looking that it involves all of it.
So BIHM the third asks, how do you fix the people?
Number one, knowledge would be the first thing I would say. And a research, and I always, as you all know, over the years would give people reference points whenever I present something, or some people like to call it receipts, so that the information becomes their own. Because when people keep or people are given a philosophy or position by different people who are going against the grain and exposing certain information that's otherwise suppressed, they have a tendency to look at that being as the source, when the real deal, when it's looked at that way, they don't recognize that it's actually their birthright information. And this is where you get so many of our people getting caught up in the imagery of people having titles rather than looking at how much of the actual work that is necessary to be put in place to restore those titles by necessity of service to the people is how we should be looking at this. Excuse me.
There's a question for you to define estate.
Estate. Now, this is essentially, and keep this in mind, while I'm going to go into estate and status, I want you all to write down land, as we've talked about before, and do the research on your own so that you can relate to this. So now when you're talking about nation, people, restoring our nation. So when you're talking nation, you're talking about the living, divine beings manifest in human flesh. And with that natural being, you would refer to in personam jurisdiction. When you're talking about the subject matter of any operations of structure of institutions that are put in place to structural formulate, to maintain, sustain, and support the structure of nation, now you're talking about subject matter jurisdiction. And when you're talking about the restored land or the aggregate land or motherland, etc., that people fly their vixillum on, and vixillum is known as your flag, etc., sometimes referred to as flying your colors, etc., that's territorial jurisdiction. All of those things must be in place, and all of those things must be taken into consideration, and an honorable approach of the people of recognizing their estate and their bloodline to have a spiritual connection to it, because people won't defend that which they don't feel is theirs, etc. And these things have been removed from our people. So let's talk about estate. Estate is the interest which anyone has in lands or in any other subject of property. So it is essentially, an estate is in lands, tenements, and hereditaments. Write down hereditaments. Signifies such interest as the tenant has therein. It is the condition or the circumstances in which the owner stands with regard to his or her property. In this sense, quote unquote, estate is constantly used in conveyances in connection with the words, quote unquote, right and rights, quote unquote, title, quote unquote, interest. Keep all this in mind, and is in a general or great degree synonymous with all of them. So estate relates to rights, titles, interest, etc., land, hereditaments, tenements,